With the war in Iraq over and the war in Afghanistan winding down, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, as we know, they're facing a new and all too often even deadlier threat. I'm talking about military and veteran suicides. And Andrew, for the people who obviously know about this beforehand, I think they still don't appreciate just the magnitude and the scope of the numbers we're talking about.
You know, for a decade we talked about IEDs and armor plating and things like that. This is even scarier and absolutely stunning. Last year there were 350 active duty military suicides. That's just shy of one every single day. That's more military lives lost to suicide in 2012 than were lost on the battlefield in Afghanistan. And the numbers only get worse once our men and women in uniform get home. Every day there are an estimated 22 military veterans who commit suicide. This despite world-class care that's available from the Veterans Administration and the VA hospital system. But the problem are the numbers of veterans in the system. There are currently 800,000 VA claims that are pending right now, and of them, 500,000 are considered backlogged, stuck in the system for 125 days or longer. Fixing that backlog was among the first jobs given to Veterans Affairs Secretary and former Army Chief of Staff General Eric Shinseki when he was appointed in 2008. He has now pledged to fix the system by 2015.
No veteran should wait for claims processing, and we're committed to ending this thing called the backlog.
Why the process is taking so long, what can and should be done to fix it, and the impact it has on those who are serving and have served. I spoke with retired Army Captain Derek Bennett, Chief of Staff for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and a veteran of the Iraq War. Derek, we know that in 2012 there were more active duty military suicides than there were battlefield losses in Afghanistan. Is anybody keeping tabs on the number of veteran suicides, and do we know what that number is?
Hi, thanks for having me. Bluntly, no. The answer to both of those questions is no. Unfortunately, neither the DoD nor the VA keep a very accurate count of veteran suicides for a lot of different reasons. And as of today, when we sit here in 2013, there's no way of knowing how many veterans are losing their lives every day. We estimate it's upwards of 22 a day, and that's a relatively firm number from the sense of what we get hearing out in the field. But no one knows the exact number, unfortunately.
What's the problem at the VA? Is it just backlogged paperwork? To your mind, what's the problem there?
So I think in terms of the VA disability benefits backlog, it's not just the VA. The VA is responsible for paying out those benefits, but they're not the only person that owns the inputs into that system. DoD has a role in that, the VA has a role in that, and the result is now more than 800,000 claims that are in the process now, of which 60% are backlogged, which means they've been waiting for more than 125 days for adjudication. That problem, as I said, spans across multiple agencies, and therefore we assume that it is the President's responsibility and the President's leadership that is necessary to fix it because it is so widespread.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but when General Shinseki became Secretary of the VA, his top priority, job number one, was trying to minimize this backlog. Is that the case, and has he done enough? Are you seeing changes in the VA?
Well, I think that the Secretary is very focused on the backlog. I give both him and Undersecretary Hickey a lot of credit for the work that they're doing. They have a plan to end the backlog by 2015. Now, 2015 is a great target. Unfortunately, we don't see the benchmarks that we would like to see in terms of what the plan is going to accomplish at each one of the quarters. You wouldn't roll out a strategy in a for-profit business without having those sort of metrics. So I think it's incumbent upon them to roll out a more detailed plan so that we understand and can hold them accountable for it. I will say that the VA has done a lot of right decisions in terms of the backlog and in terms of disability benefit claims. Part of the reason that it's ballooned is because they've expanded the definitions of PTSD and made it easier for veterans of all generations to file a claim under that under PTSD, as well as expanded the Agent Orange benefit for the Vietnam generation of veterans. So there has been some good that has resulted in this expanded backlog. Now the point is to focus on reducing the backlog, reducing those claims to get them to zero, ideally before 2015 in a perfect world, and then ensure that there's not going to be any backlog in the future, which is where the process optimizations come in.
So it's not that military apparatus are too focused on active duty and not enough on veterans. It's just simply the backlog, the sheer numbers?
Well, I think it's unfortunately part of the problem that makes this so complex that it's two different things. The military apparatus is not really focused on veterans from the sense of before you become a veteran, so DOD to the left, they're very focused on active duty as they should be. And then to the right is where the VA really takes hold of the veteran. In that case, the DOD I don't think is doing enough work to ensure that there's a smooth handover of a veteran or an active duty person once they become a veteran to the VA.
IAVA is involved in something called the Weight We Carry. It's a program aimed to try to at least ameliorate some of these problems. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Absolutely. We're very proud of the Weight We Carry, which you can see at either iava.org or theweightwecarry.org. Through a generous grant from the Knight Foundation and working together with them, we've created this web page, which is a data visualization tool, which really puts a human face and story onto the backlog. You go in and you can see by state, by gender, by service, how many folks are in the backlog. These are all stories that they've self-reported to us and what kind of financial and economic and emotional toll it's taken on them and their families.
It's interesting that you bring that up. It's easy to look at this in the abstract as a military problem or a bureaucratic problem, but it really is a personal set of personal stories. Yeah. Is it personal for you too? And if so, can you share one or two stories with us?
Yeah, it's personal for me. I'm fortunate to have not been in the backlog. I've had several of my staff members who have waited in the backlog for 180 days or more. As you may know, the national average is 270 days before you get adjudication on your case, which is well beyond the VA's own benchmark of 125 days before it becomes backlogged. But one of our members, Jason Ayala, who's from Sun Valley, California, deployed to Iraq twice. He did convoy security. As a result, most of us who have done anything in a convoy in Iraq have suffered IED explosions and other sorts of attacks. When Jason came back to the United States, he didn't know what else to do outside of the military. And once he transitioned into the civilian sector, he ended up in a bit of a downward spiral, has begun to pull himself out of that, but along the way filed for disability benefits with the VA. 6 to 7 months after his first claim, he got a note from the VA that said, "We got your paperwork." And more than a year and a half later, as of today, he still has not received any judgment on the benefits claim that he's put in. So now the disability benefits that he's owed by this country have not been paid to him. He's waited well beyond the national average, and it could be another year and a half before Jason gets what he deserves.
Finally, Derek, so many people have yellow ribbons on their cars, support our troops. We see inspirational messages all the time, and certainly the American public backs the military. But is there something of a disconnect between that level of support and issues like this with our returning servicemen?
I think that there is. I do think that we as a country have done much better this time around relative to, say, Vietnam, of separating the war from the warrior. So regardless of how you feel about Afghanistan and Iraq, we all support our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guardmen and Marines who've gone over there. I do think, though, that the country needs to do a little bit more than just putting a yellow ribbon on their car, a little more than just thanking someone that they see in the airport who happens to be in uniform. Part of what is incumbent upon us as a country is to continue this conversation about things like the VA benefits backlog. It's to continue the conversation about healthcare standards for our veterans that aren't up to standard. It's incumbent upon the entire country, it's part of being a democracy, that we continue to pull these issues into the national consciousness and demand that our leaders be held accountable for fixing them and be held accountable for their own plans to fix them. A failure to do that, I think, is a failure to help our veterans as they come back.
And if you'd like to learn more about the IAVA's effort, head over to theweightwecarry.org. Rich.
Andrew, thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to introduce you to a fascinating guy. You'll hear from a man who overcame all the odds, was able to avoid the pull of inner city life only to come back, this time as a healer. We will head to Newark for a remarkable story of hope and perseverance. It's coming up next.